Hey guys, ScannerDanner here with my son Caleb. Today we're with my son Caleb behind the camera, if you didn't catch that.
What else would I be doing?
I don't know.
With
my son Caleb, but we never see him, so who's this Caleb person he's talking about?
Right.
That's my son behind the camera. Anyway, we're working on a 2014 Dodge something or other. I don't know, 3.6 liter engine. I don't know what this thing is. It's a Dodge. We'll get you the update of the car in a minute. I don't think it's a Durango.
No.
History of the car is misfiring. It has come from another shop and has already had you can see number 2 misfire here on the scan tool. It's had a number 2 ignition coil and plug put in it from what we're told, and we could see under the manifold on the one corner, you can see that the coil is new on the number 2 cylinder. So that is the history. And what they told my brother yesterday is that they only feel the misfire at idle. They don't feel it when they're driving it, and they suspected a mechanical problem. And so what my brother and I did yesterday off camera is I just simply did a clear flood crank, and we listened to the cadence of the way the engine cranked for compression issues, and it sounded perfect. And then we started it up, and I could feel the misfire. Guys, this feels like a secondary ignition misfire to me. I know that the coil's new, I know the plug is new, it has that feeling to it, and what I want to do is recreate that problem, and then I want to confirm that it only does it at idle. I believe it does it also under load, and so we're going to go test drive it, and so that's where we're at. All right, let's start it now. Maybe we have a driver that's failing. Maybe it's misidentifying actually what cylinder is misfiring. All right, first thing I can show you guys on the system tests, we'll be able to see the misfires here too. You click on which cylinder is misfiring, and Chrysler's been pretty good with this over the years of giving us current and history misfires, and you watch our number 2. We'll graph it too for you. We can feel it right when the counter grabs it, we can feel it. It seemed to be worse yesterday than it is right now. It may have been warmer. It's just every so often. All right, let's go for a ride. The only downside of what we're dealing with this car right now is the intake manifold covers all of the ignition system. It covers all of them. I felt the miss right there, just pulling out. I felt it right there too. Now, if this is idle only, it might change our direction a little bit. Do some light throttle driving first. Has some pretty good pickup. Not familiar with this engine at all. I think it's a regular port type system. I don't think it's GDI. Thought I saw a fuel injector yesterday when I was looking. They're right. I don't feel any misses, and we're not really getting any counters. So it runs pretty good while driving it. I don't really feel a misfire at all. Typically a secondary ignition problem, you'll be able to get them to reveal themselves on quick snap throttle type tests, and also when you first pull out from a stop. Those types of situations is usually where you can force a secondary ignition misfire to reveal itself. So I'm wondering if we're dealing with some kind of control issue, like a coil intermittently not firing from a driver issue from the computer, or a wiring issue. That doesn't explain why it wouldn't do it under load, but this feels, I'm telling you, this feels like a secondary ignition misfire. Let me come back to it. Yeah, there it is. There's the miss. You can feel it, you can see it on the counter. Okay, so what else can I use to help me here? I'm looking for some guidance. Let's see what kind of trims, what these trims do when this misfires. It's just so intermittent. and it legit is only doing it at idle. I thought yesterday when I did a brake torque, I could make it miss. Well, fuel trim isn't going to help me. It's just so sporadic. All right, real fixes for the 302. Ignition coil and plugs, spark plugs, replaced engine cylinder head. That's not good. I mean, it could be mechanical still, but replaced fuel injector, replaced intake plenum gasket, replaced ignition coil and plugs, plenum gasket, O2. Those are the real fixes. We're cheating. I mean, that's a whole lot of spark plugs being changed. It feels ignition related to me. If it was a plenum gasket, we would have positive trim numbers. We might not have positive trim numbers. This is a MAP engine. We'll have to keep that in mind, the plenum gasket. But it's like not doing it. It was worse when I first started it. All right, so on this diagram, we have all of our ignition coils. This is a main feed that goes to the next page, and it has its own designated fuse coming off of the ASD relay. So fuse 63 is the ignition coil fuse. I'll be able to see all the coils firing from there. I'll be able to tell if we have a computer control dropping out of coil. And then 64 also comes off the ASD relay, is for my fuel injectors. There is one variable there that it also feeds the computer. It says ASD control output. So those are feeds into, even though it says output, that's kind of weird. Those are feeds into the engine computer, and it may be activating other circuits. So our injectors might be a little bit noisy because of that. But if we go to the next page, you can see that in fact the injectors are on that circuit. So we can see all the injectors firing from fuse 64 is the injectors, fuse 63 is the coils. We're gonna do that first. It's real easy to do. I'll pop the fuse out, put a jumper in, put my amp probe around it. We'll take a quick look, and then we'll go from there. Maybe we'll go after, if we don't see anything there, maybe we'll go after the plenum gasket and do some checks on that next. There's 63 and 64 right there. 63 is a 20 amp, 64 is a 25 amp. It's right here. Those two guys right there. How hard was that? Not hard at all. Fuse boxes are like my nemesis. Turn them around. Why is that hard to do? Because if I look at it this way, I have to transfer everything in a mirror image, like from that to here.
Okay, but look. You turn this around and stand where I am right now.
The manufacturers are generally bad at laying them out. 20 amp fuse first. Ah, sweet. That's a newer style of fuse. And I say sweet because my friends at AES Wave sent me these adapters, and it's exactly the one that I need to work on this setup. Put the fuse back in there. Put this in its place. Look at that. That's just wonderful. Okay, lab scope, low amp 20. Which is the same scaling as this Pico. Every 100 millivolts is 1 amp. And we'll just start it up and see what it looks like. Turn that around. Looks like my coils on this one. Yep, these are my ignition coils. 10 amp, this is pretty high amperage. See if I can catch the miss. As soon as I feel it, I'm gonna hit pause. I thought this thing was missing a little bit more than what it does. It's a little bit frustrating how much it's not misfiring. What I'm looking for as we're waiting, I pause this, I'll zoom out, and then what I wanna see is like a drop in one of these waveforms, but I need it to misfire. Yeah, I am seeing a little bit of a tail on the trailing edge of the one, but that's not a major concern for me, as it's not misfiring. It's not misfiring right now. And then the turn on oscillations, a lot of you will be looking at that like over here on the front side. Say, hey, I can't see the turn on oscillations. Well, you can't on all systems, so I'm not worried about that either. These all look uniform and even. They're all being drawn right now over top of each other. And I'm gonna use the buffer to help me because I do want detail and repetition, but I need it to miss, and right now it's not misfiring, like at all. I know they had the upper plenum off whenever they did the number 2 coil, which is right here. As soon as I grabbed this and touched it, it misfired. I'm gonna zoom out one more level. I don't like that it actually misfired when I touched this. I would think this would set some kind of primary circuit fault if this was the case, but I'm gonna push on that connector for that coil gently. Dude, this sucks. Can't make it miss. I felt it. I don't see any gaps. Let's give me a couple here. There was a couple right there, right there, right there. It's missing good right now. No, we're not dropping coils, at least on the primary side. Not seeing anything in those coil oscillations at all that are changing. I'm not seeing any dropouts whatsoever. Switching to my fuel injector. We got all kinds of crap going on here. That sucks. So we got all kind of circuitry being controlled in this computer on this fuse. Your injector patterns are the little spikes that are like in here. Those guys right there are your injector firing events. They're real small. It's going to be next to impossible to use the fuse to look at all of these injectors. That really is rather unfortunate. Yeah, there's just too much other activity in here. My number 2 fuel injector connector. I don't know if you can see that down in there. Kind of what I'm going after. Normally, you know, you get open circuit injector codes, so I don't expect it to be a wiring problem, I guess. Just not missing enough. I'm getting a spray bottle. I'm gonna spray around the lower part of the intake gasket. I know they had the upper plenum off when they did the coil, but I guess it's bubbling because of temperature. Ready? There it is. There it is. There it is. Here, I thought this was going to be an easy one. It's not misfiring consistent enough. Misfire, damn it. Please. It's like finding a needle in a haystack right now. I mean, it only misfires at idle, and you know, driving it, putting it under load, I can't make it miss. And the misfire is like so sporadic right now that like this is just like, it's not an easy one that we thought we were gonna have. I'm never gonna see it in this waveform anyway. Like an injector dropping out. And again, if it's electrically a connection issue, there was one misfire right there. If it's electrically a connection issue, you're gonna set like a 202, I think is a code, injector control circuit. I mean, it's possible, I guess, to have a driver that's intermittently dropping out and not set a code, but I can't track a misfire that happens once every 60 seconds and it's a single miss. Danner! I'm quitting. Yep, it's not misfiring anymore. I'll get like one misfire every 2 minutes. I was able to confirm the coils are not dropping out. That's as far as I've gotten. I'm on the injectors, but there's all kind of other ASD in there. You know, you can see the little triangles. You know, that's an injector firing event. That's one right there in the valley. That's one there. That's one there. You know, but like to be able to use this screen to see an injector drop out, it's going to be next to impossible. Not to mention, it's not misfiring. My amp clamp just shut off. I can't make it miss. I can't fix
the engine light on for? Is it for number 2?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. And I did do a snap on like real fixes, like common fixes.
Yeah.
And there's like 1,500 of them were ignition coils, and 700 was like spark plugs, and then 500 of them was an intake plenum gasket. And you know, that's possible, and it was worse when it was cold, and that might be what I'm struggling with right now, is it's kind of sealed up. And this is a MAP engine, speed density, so you're not gonna have lean exhaust codes with a runner issue on one cylinder on one of these. It's just gonna be a misfire. So I was trying to spray like down into the number 2 area to try to, you know, make it reveal itself, but there's nothing. And it was definitely worse when it was cold. And so I think maybe the answer is we shut this off and let it cool down. And
which gives you the perfect opportunity to quit and go home, right?
No, that's smoke. I think maybe we smoke test the intake.
Okay.
You know,
if I have smoke.
Well, you have the little bladder piece,
I'm just
right?
Suspicious that I'm almost out of that oil.
I'm going to shut this off because this isn't helping us with it hot. It's like, I guess yesterday it wasn't fully warmed up when we were looking at it.
No, all they did was pull it over and shut it off, and I started it and I felt it and I shut it off.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. Like,
so it was missing this when you pulled it in out there?
It was missing before I took it for a drive, like decently, like pretty consistent. I'm like, we should have no problem tracking this down, and
then it quit.
And then I start getting stuff hooked up, and it, you know, it's real hot now too.
So it actually missed from a vacuum leak.
Yep, on an intake runner.
Yeah, and if someone pulled that off and never changed the
lower one, there would be no reason to touch the lower one. They only had the upper off.
Could it be an upper one that's doing it?
I don't think so.
No.
Well, I mean, they had it off. I mean, it's possible, but you know, they had it off chasing this problem, and they probably, I'm sure, changed the gasket.
Yeah, I don't know the whole story of where it was at and why they charged so much money to, looks like, not change any of the coils. Looks like the only one I saw was new was the one 5-star put in.
Yeah, the one number 2. That's underneath the manifold right there. We'll go right into the purge valve hose right here. Man, we need something with some real smoke, man. This is like,
you're never gonna see it.
Never gonna see that. This is like not a good fit either. There's no way. I can't use this. I'm frustrated now, Caleb. It's just sometimes for what we do, I don't know, it frustrates me because if I'm in the field and I'm working on a car, it's no big deal. You just let it cool off, go do another car. This is the only one we have. We're here. We have everything set up. We just can't make it do it. So it's frustrating. Just let that go for a bit. We'll give it like 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna scrub this for right now.
You want that 5 minutes off camera?
No. Hey, Danner.
Yeah.
Another common fix is head gasket.
A head gasket?
Or cylinder head.
Yeah.
From coolant leaking into the number 2. So I think I want to do a sniff test, hydrocarbon sniff test. But I was going to let it cool off a little bit. I might want to walk away from this and let the intake cool off, so we can redo this test. But I want to do the head gasket test too, because I'm not seeing anything here.
No, it's just coming out right there.
Yeah. So we at least filled the intake at this point.
What are you tapped into? Just a vacuum
PCV
line?
Or the purge line.
Gotcha.
And this isn't ideal lighting either.
No, LEDs don't work on that smoke at all.
But we should be able to see, like, that's coming out of the air box now.
Hope you're happy now.
That's a lot of smoke, isn't it? Coolest tool ever. I see nothing. I see nothing. Need to cool it off. Whoa, oh, oh! We have smoke!
I see it.
Intake gasket dinner.
I see it.
Did you see it? Did you catch it on the camera?
Yeah.
Or is that smoke just the water like steaming? I mean, I just saw a whole bunch right there.
It looked pretty smoky to me.
It did. It's just my soap and water mixture here, like vaporizing. I think that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, because look, it's stopping. It's slowing down now.
Is it a false alarm?
I think so.
Well, let's put some over here on this part and see if it does it over here. Yeah. False alarm. Well, we'll do the hydrocarbon test, and if that fails to reveal anything, then I'm gonna have my brother let this cool off and re-smoke test it when it's cold. All right, one of the things that I have taught you guys for many, many years, and it's even in my book, is checking an engine misfire and looking at freeze frame data and seeing the temperature at which the misfire set. I assumed incorrectly that this was a hot engine. The hotter it got, the worse it got. Not the case. I can't even really feel the misfire at all anymore. Looking at freeze frame data right now on the scan tool, you can see that we're at 165 degrees of coolant temperature, and we are at idle. So engine speed top left is showing 788. The engine coolant temp degree Fahrenheit is showing 165. So it's during the warm up that this thing flagged this cylinder 2 misfire. And that's what we're seeing too, that the colder the engine was, the worse it was, the warmer it got, the better it got. And there are two things that I really focus on when I see that. And this is, again, listed in my book in chapter 1, and that's a head gasket and an intake gasket. And we may have to let this sit. If the head gasket test proves to be inconclusive, we're gonna let this sit and cool off and revisit the intake manifold gasket. So let's do the hydrocarbon test, being we have an analyzer to do it, and see what we get. All right, looking at my hydrocarbons here for this, I'm gonna go in the overflow bottle. We wanna make sure we're not pulling any coolant into this. And I've found this test to be absolutely 100% accurate. And the key is repetition. And then also I wanna see more than 100 parts per million hydrocarbons. There shouldn't be any. Some people claim to get false readings of hydrocarbons with the coolant that's being used, and I have never seen that, not once. So I'm gonna put this in here, Caleb, and then you're gonna focus on that HC number. Go ahead, do it right now. And I see nothing. No change, right? It did nothing. So in a case like that, you know, when it's a head gasket failure, we get enough pressure in the system, it starts to put into the overflow bottle. I don't want to take the cap off right now. It's too hot. There's way too much pressure in the system. The overflow bottle was good enough, and so what that test tells us, this is not a head gasket issue. I'll do it one more time, but okay. One of the things that we can do is we can kind of burp it a little bit into there. So this is pretty dangerous. There's major safety here. But what I'm trying to do is get some of this coolant that's in the system into this overflow bottle. Leave that there, like, no, we'll do this. Okay, I just dumped a bunch of fresh coolant in there, gases in there. Nothing. Just sitting there at 24, isn't it? Never moved. It's not a head gasket issue. This is not our problem. At least I don't think so. All right, people. Because this feels like a secondary ignition misfire to me, and the fact that these are 2-wire coils with the drivers in the computer that I can get really good secondary patterns from. I should have done this in the first place. Should have done this, whatever. I should have done this in the first place, and that's get a waveform of this secondary, and so I just want to do that real quick. And I'm using my Pico because I didn't have my other probes for the Varus for this, and this will give us the nicest picture anyway. And the probe I'm using is my coil on plug ignition probe, and we're ready to go, man. I just got to start it up, and I'm going to lay this on top of this ignition coil, which sits right there. Oh, it's nice. I'll maybe even be able to wedge it there and don't even have to hold it. Awesome. Yeah. I figured I'm going to do a secondary KV test here real quick, Danner. Hopefully get a decent picture from it. Oh yeah, dude, this is a secondary. How did?
Come on, man. How did
what? Yeah, I'm getting some mis-triggering here, but this is a secondary misfire, dude. Look at the downward slope of that spark line.
With a new coil and a new plug.
Yeah. Well, back under, you're pulling the intake back off. I should have did this from the start. Let's see if I can get a little bit better of a capture of that. We'll try a different coil for a comparison. One in the back on this side I can get to. This is the number 5. So we're gonna have this downward looking characteristic of that spark line. And that's just the way it's gonna be. Don't worry about that characteristic. That's an unusual looking spark line, but that's your miss right there. Danner, come here, check this out. Look at that. Let's look at it live. I felt that. I felt that one right there. Right there. And then look at the next one. Like, that's what, you know, this is crappy looking waveform. I get that. But I felt that right there. That when I felt the hit, this got to come back apart. The intake's got to come off. We need a little bit more vehicle history now, just to know, was this always a number 2? Did it move? What changed? I felt that. I saw it and I felt it right there. I know you guys are like, well, that's a crappy looking waveform. You're right, it is. It's just the way these are sometimes. Right there, felt that too. Spark line, no spark line. This is secondary, Danner. I don't know, pull it back apart. Tell them it's a secondary misfire. They put a bad plug in it. I don't know. Plug or coil. Honestly, what you should do is move the number 2 coil and number 2 plug to the number 5 cylinder, because that's the one that's available on the other side, and then put it back together. And then we can scope the number 5, which was the number 2. And I don't know, our problem's inside. The intake's got to come off. The primary ramp is good, intake's got to come off. And that is not, some of you might be thinking, well, intake gasket, what's that going to look like? Not that. That spark is not jumping the gap of the spark plug. It's a crappy looking waveform, right? But look, this is when it's firing. Like, there's your firing line and then your spark line. Well, the other ones look like that too, just insulation factors, right? When it misfires,
You're using an inductive one.
Yeah, a little capacitive pickup. When it missed, I felt it and saw it at the same time. That's secondary all day long. When you see that kind of hash in there, it is not firing across that spark plug.
So you think the coil is generating? Well,
It is, like we're still getting our energy that it needs, and the coil primary ramp is good. There were no issues with the ramps. So it's not a control issue. This is on the secondary side. Whether it's leaking out of the boot into the housing, or we got a cracked or bad spark plug, that's what we have. That's what we have. And watch it again. And even when it's not missing, you're still getting, that shouldn't be happening either. Like that, did you see it in here?
I haven't seen him in like days.
Miss. That's secondary all freaking day long, and I can't. I should have started with that test. I'm really upset that I didn't. You know, we tend to not do it because it's a new parts. All right, so here's the deal with this. This has to go, and Caleb, you can just leave this waveform up next to me as I'm talking, because this is misfiring pretty good. Again, ignore the downward trend of that. That's because of my coil unplugged probe and the ignition design on this. But you can see like that spark line sometimes is halfway disappearing, and we don't feel a misfire for that. But when we do feel a misfire is when that spark line, that downward trend disappears and then gets all that hash. That's when you can feel the miss. All day long, this is secondary. And I didn't go that direction. I did call it from the get-go. This felt like secondary. And normally when you see something like that, it's not just gonna be an idle thing. You'd be able to catch that under load, so that's strange too. And then also the new parts made me look in another direction, and I just shouldn't have. I mean, we did cover some good bases of misfires with this video, but that is secondary all day long. Unfortunately for us, this came from the garage across the street, and so it's got to go back to them to redo that. And I just don't know that I'm going to have a follow-up for you guys on this. It's not our job. It was just our job to tell them what to do, and it's what they just did. They were in there. We still have a problem on cylinder 2, and if this is my car and it was my repair, I would do what I said, which is pull the intake, take the number 2 coil, number 2 plug, move it over to the number 5 on the other side, because the number 5, you don't have to pull anything off. It's accessible. And then, you know, you can go from there. But this is classic secondary ignition misfires. And if you guys want more info on this kind of stuff, my chapter 22 playlist on both my premium channel and here on YouTube, you'll find a whole bunch of ignition misfire type diagnosis, and that's classic. We're done. This is a secondary ignition problem. Hope I can get more for you guys as far as an update, but what I've seen, if this is like a bad plug, say for example, even a new plug that was put in, you're not gonna see anything. I've seen many plugs that were bad that you see nothing. So a visual, I'm not sure, would help us. It'd be nice if we were finishing it. We're not. Hoping for an update. See how it goes. Thank you guys for joining us. Frustrating one for me for sure. See you guys next time. Are you still filming? Yeah. Oh man, you know it. Yeah. I'm back. He's at the end. Yeah, when he kicks his shopping cart. 13 minutes. 13 minutes. We should have freaking started here. Can't believe it. Got my ass kicked by a secondary ignition misfire. I knew it was a secondary ignition misfire.
Got a spider on your back.
Dude, get it off my back. Get him off me.
Not missing.
No, I'm gonna throw the scope on it anyway and see if I can see those intermittent short spark lines.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, when I started it last night,
there was one.
There goes one.
That was cylinder 2.
Was it?
Well, I mean, I got 3 misfire counts on cylinder 2 and only 1 on 5. That's not good.